In 1654, 23 Sephardic Jews arrived in New Amsterdam and incorporated She'erit Israel, the very first shul in what would become the United States. They didn't know it at the time, but they were laying the foundation for a community that would come to number 7.5 million strong. As Jewish immigration surged in the late 19th and early 20th centuries, Jewish culture exploded alongside it. Jewish newspapers, Yiddish theater, summer bungalow colonies, and eventually, Jewish voices shaping Hollywood and American comedy itself. Over time, what started as Jewish culture for Jews filtered into the broader American consciousness. But something interesting has been happening more recently. If the 20th century was about Jewish culture going mainstream, the 21st century has seen an explosion of religious Jewish culture, especially within the Orthodox world. Music, food, vacations, weddings, publishing, entire ecosystems have grown more sophisticated, more invisible, and more influential than ever before. Sure, these things existed in earlier generations, but the scale and intensity today are something new. And that's what this podcast is about. If you're listening, you're probably like me. Someone who consumes this culture, lives inside it, but is also deeply curious about it. Not just what exists, but why and how it exists. What drives it, how it shapes us, and what it says about Orthodox Jewish life in America right now. On this podcast, we hope to speak with musicians, authors, podcasters, and creators of all kinds to explore modern Orthodox culture from the inside, thoughtfully, practically, and honestly. Welcome to From But Relatable. Moshe, thank you very much for joining me on the podcast today. Our guest today, Moshe Kinderlehrer, is the publisher and co-founder of the Jewish Link of New Jersey, Expanded Edition, and the Jewish Link Media Group. After nearly 2 decades in the nonprofit and fundraising field, he launched his first paper in 2013, the bi-weekly Jewish Link of Bergen County. With God's help, it was an immediate success, and from this first paper, which soon became a weekly and was renamed the Jewish Link of New Jersey in 2014, he expanded his media and print efforts by founding the Jewish Link of the Bronx, Westchester, and Connecticut in 2015. He has helped launch papers in Rockland County, the Philadelphia area, and the D.C., Maryland area. He's also affiliated with the Queens Jewish Link and Bukharian Jewish Link and is working on other media and print-related businesses as well. Moshe, thank you very much. Before even anything else, I don't even think I realized how many other, sister papers there were. I knew about the Queens one, and that actually might be it. The ones that I'd heard of before, right there.
The truth is, there are actually other ones. We basically say Kaddish for them. I started a paper a few years ago in DC called Kol Habira, Voice of the Capital. That failed. I also started a paper called the Philadelphia Jewish Link, which unfortunately we started 6 months before COVID started, and that also failed. And my current monthly paper is actually my second attempt at a monthly paper. So all told, we've been involved in starting good papers. Obviously, really for the observant Orthodox Shomer Shabbos community. And although I will say, I think I've finished with my expansion paper. I shouldn't even say that. I'm sorry. I'm not going to say that because I'm thinking about LA literally right now. After this call, I'm having a meeting about restarting in LA. There is right now no Orthodox LA paper, if you can believe.
Really? No, it's hard to believe.
No.
Okay,
well, so there was, but it closed about 3-4 months ago, and they basically but that's whatever. I'm just saying. But the answer is the Orthodox community needs. We need. I believe that we need news. People want to read about their Dalet Amos. They want to read about their schools, their yeshivot, their shuls. Their local sports. Their local, rabbanim, rabbis give, divrei Torah. I think that in many ways is the mix that I think really works. I think that's what communities want, and hopefully I'm right. Hopefully on this podcast I'll also share with you some of my other dreams. But certainly the work of the last. But this is my bar mitzvah year of being in the. This is the 13th year we've been in the business. So
wow.
This has been the kind of like my focus for the last 10 plus years.
Amazing. Well, so now you're an adult. I guess the paper is officially an adult.
Yeah.
But going back, I guess, to the very beginning, even before the paper, can you give me a little bit more about your background, just to give us a little more color, as well as maybe things that eventually led to kind of your work in the paper?
100%. So part of the bio that you didn't read was I really come out of the tzedakah world, come out of the fundraising world. I spent about 17, 18 years in the Orthodox fundraising world. My last position was for my alma mater, Yeshiva University. I was there for a few years. I actually started the paper while I was working at Yeshiva University. I loved fundraising. You'll laugh if you think about it. When you're going to advertisers who've never seen who don't know really what your paper is, or what you're talking about, you're in many ways the same skill set that you use for fundraising, you also use for selling a brand new paper. So that's what I'm saying. I had to use some of that same skill set. I was at organizations ranging from American Friends of Leket Israel, OHEL, Gesher, Jerusalem College of Technology, Machon Lev. And before that, actually, my real dream originally was to be a rabbi and a professor. I was the assistant rabbi at Fifth Avenue Synagogue, when I was finishing smicha, and my goal was to become a professor of political science, political economy. I did not achieve either of those objectives. So in many ways, one of the jokes in the community is I'm a retired rabbi, but when I'm feeling a little bit darker, more despondent, which is I say more of a failed rabbi. So but I prefer the term retired rabbi. So basically. In many ways, actually, the Jewish link is not where I saw myself 25, 30 years ago. I was going to be, by the way, the Torah Umada ideal.
Mm-hmm.
I was going to be a rabbi and a professor, Torah in the morning on Shabbos and, secular studies and, I was going to be the one who was going to be able to balance it all and succeed in both. The truth is actually when you're in Swayu Smicha, they don't really want you. They want you doing a graduate degree, but they weren't that excited. I remember Rabbi Lamo, he was not that excited about me doing a degree at NYU. Like he really would have preferred if I had done, let's say, an Azrieli or a Revel degree. But no, that wasn't good enough for me. I wanted to be like I wanted to be the Torah Mada dream child. And it didn't work out exactly the way I ended up. But I will say the following, there's no question that there is a connection between what my original dreams were and where I am today with the Jewish Link, which is really kind of, I'm in the community media. I'm a community, newspaper publisher. Really a lot of that same impulse, force, koach that I had then. Maybe it's transmuted a little bit, but it's some of those themes are still running throughout my, what I do on a day-to-day basis and my work in the community. So yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, I think that work is still very evident in the paper itself, right? I think the paper is indicative of a Torah Umad, the paper. It's like a running joke or a running machlokes I have with my dad about like if you're allowed to bring it into the bathroom,
Famous line. So, there's a famous joke about that. So the question is, are you allowed to bring it into the bathroom? By the way, the answer is you're not really. I'm just telling you the psak is.
Gotcha.
For most LORs, for most local Orthodox rabbis, is you cannot bring it into the bathroom because it has a lot of Torah in it. The old joke used to be was like with the Jewish press and others, well, could you even bring it out of the bathroom? That was the old joke. I never liked that joke, and I'm actually happy to say that you can't bring it into the bathroom. But however, many of my readers tell me that they do read it in the bathroom, and I'm like, you know what? I'm not gonna be their Rav and tell them not to bring it into the bathroom. I actually, because you know why? Because I want them to be reading the paper. So if the bathroom is the only time they're going to read the paper, fine, read it there. If they want to read, let's say, a Dvar Torah in the bathroom, I'm not going to be the one to tell them not to do it.
Sure. I said this is maybe this is a good next editorial. This could be a topic of discussion.
Yeah. I don't love it because then you get the questions of like of quality and things like that, and I kind of I prefer to stay away sometimes from those. Even though I'm very proud of my paper, but I don't need to have like we don't need to get into arguments over why do you have this columnist, why do you have that columnist? It's all good though. But definitely you are not the first to make a bathroom joke. You and your dad, so no question.
Sure, yeah. So in terms of the leap, right? This is a lot about your background, and something that you said I think was very interesting was how you said that the fundraising is actually similar to pitching a paper. So can you give me a little bit more detail on that next step? What prompted the Jewish Link, the Jewish Link of now New Jersey, expanded edition, and what was that? What got you to make that leap from fundraising to the paper or idea to actual execution?
Okay. So the first, it's a good question. One thing I forgot to say off is that I say at the beginning is I'm also I was the undergraduate. I was the Yeshiva University, Yeshiva College commentator editor in chief. So even as a college student, I always had I've had exposure to papers. And for people who know me from back then, they look at me, Moshe, and say, "Hey, Moshe, you never really left the paper business." They're not wrong in a certain sense. So what happened was I was in the fundraising world, and I'm living in Teaneck and then it was already over a decade, and I really felt that you're going to laugh. I would go to the five towns, and the five towns back then, this is 2011, 2010, had not one, not two, but three free Orthodox weekly papers. And it was just so jarring to me. And I'm a paper guy. I read papers. I read magazines. I'm a big reader. And I'm like, it was so jarring to me, so weird. Why the five towns which often North Jersey, Bergen County, Jersey is often compared to, or we see that as a peer community in our world. Why would they have three Orthodox papers? They're the Five-Town Jewish Times, Five-Town Jewish Home, and they have what's called the Jewish Star. And our community, our area, Teaneck, Greater Teaneck, or I know you're from Elizabeth. We had one or two secular federation-backed papers that really weren't serving the needs of the Orthodox community. And every time I would see on my local publications, a picture of a Reform rabbi with a guitar, or they were broadcasting a message in Yiddish of "Nicht von mir," this is not for us. And I had the idea for a paper for a long time, and I'm at my job in YU, and I'm still thinking about this job. And the Queens Jewish Link actually started about 8 months before me, and I'm from Queens originally. My father said, "Hey, Moshe, there's a paper here that started in Queens. You should meet with these guys." And I did meet them. And it really just spurred I just said, I got to do this. It also happened to hit at a time where, I'm at Yeshiva University, I'm fundraising. And when you're in the Orthodox world, the Yeshiva University is like the Yankees. Like, you really can't get that much bigger. Maybe Lakewood-based Medrash Gavoa is a bigger institution fundraising wise, but you really can't get bigger. And, and I was reporting to the head of Yeshiva University fundraising, and I'm kind of like, what's next for me? I'm by the way, at this point, I'm 39, 40. And I just felt like I needed to do something. Like I didn't really want my boss's job at Yeshiva University for different reasons. I just didn't, I love Yeshiva University. I'm a big YU guy, but I didn't think I would be able to get to that level. And I also really felt that the opportunity was there. And you're going to laugh. I actually believed, and I told people, I believe we needed our own paper. That was actually my sell. My sell was, we don't know what we're missing. I went to the rabbis. I went to the RCBC. I said, the Orthodox community, we are strong enough. We need our own paper. We need it. And I believed it with very, very serious emunah. You should know, Barak, most people thought I was absolutely insane. They thought I was completely meshugana, completely lost it. And I want you to know that anything that they said, I guess it's typical for entrepreneurs. Like, what they said did not, it just washed over me. Like, I know that anyone who thought I was crazy, I just knew they were wrong. Like, they're just wrong, and I think you have to have kind of like that. You have to have that little bit of meshugana, and I'll tell you a couple of stories also how crazy you have to be to start a paper. I also felt a little bit it was because of the little more modern Orthodox communities. You have to understand the whole modern Orthodox ethos in many ways is that we're part of the larger community. We want to be seen. We're not parochial. We want to be seen doing up there with the reform and conservative movements. And I'm like, no, that's not what we want. First of all, we're a lot stronger. We're living different lives. Our kids are we're eating kosher. We're sending to camps. We're sending to yeshivas. And so, we're actually, my point was, we're actually almost a different community than the Reform conservative movements, which may be greater in number, but certainly are not greater when it comes to newspapers. That's for sure. So I had this deep belief that I had to do something, and I actually had a meeting in my last year of working for Yeshiva University. I said, guys, I'm starting a paper. It's going to be good for YU. I'm going to be the chairman. I'm going to hire editors. I'm going to hire salespeople, and they're all going to report to me, and it's going to be good. and they all looked at me literally like I was a loon. Like they thought literally Moshe had lost it. Like I just lost it. Like who? I mean, I want you. People came over to me a year or 2 or 3 later. There's still people. There are 10 or 50 people in the community who come over to me and say, Moshe, we thought you were crazy. Even one of my partners, the current mayor of Teaneck, basically told me later he thought I was going to fail. And I started the paper in March of 2013. And the first issue was, I'm so proud, it was 52 pages, which is still larger than most non-Orthodox papers today. If they get to over 40, they're like, it's a celebration. And it's been, honestly, it's been really, thank God, almost, I would say, you know, maybe with COVID being, we could talk about COVID in a second, but it's been just up and up and up. The reception, the you know, almost from the beginning, once people realize, like, oh my God, there's a good chance, like, you know, I could be in this paper, my shul could be in the paper, my kids could be in the paper, my grandkids, on a weekly basis. You know, this paper is really for me. It's really for my issues, my community, you know, my schools, you know, this paper's for me. And by the way, it's really, you know, when we first started, I was Jewish Link of Bergen County. Barak, I really was not interested at the beginning. I actually did not realize we could expand. My vision, my community visions expanded over the years. But, you know, whether you were in Englewood, whether you were in Fairlawn, like the paper really spoke to people. And thank God, it's been good ever since. I try very, very careful to make sure that nothing, I'm a public-facing paper. I'm a public-facing person. You know, certainly not everyone there loves me and the Jewish Link, but I've really managed so far, and you know, hopefully continues to. You know, it's a lot of times institutions get tarnished, they get dinged. I've been able to more or less, you know, kind of, you know, not everyone's always happy with everything we publish, that's for sure. But I've seen, you know, kind of more or less, like even once people who are not happy, by the way, one of the big lessons of being a publisher is that when someone's upset at you, is actually when someone's cursing you out, when someone's really, really upset at you and super upset, that's actually a good thing. I know it sounds crazy, because they care about what you did, meaning you matter. The Jewish Link matters. What gets published, what gets put in the Jewish Link matters. So even if they're screaming, cursing you out, okay, the fact that they care is actually a good thing. And one of the nice things about my business the Jewish Link, is that, you know, very often, not always, but many times I can make things up to them. I can, you know, like I can calm them down. I can make it up to them. You know, I could change something. I could change an article online. I could do something for them the following week, and take the anger out of it. And thank God I've had, you know, it's been a good run so far, and I'm really looking to continue to grow as well.
Amazing. Yeah, it's true. I heard that line kind of in other contexts, that the worst thing is apathy. But, you know, if somebody, or the other way to put it is that if nobody disagrees with you, then you know, you're not really saying anything real. And I definitely want to talk more about the growth in a second. You mentioned, right, and actually for me, who lived not in Bergen County, Elizabeth, right, I definitely noticed a shift at some point where I felt like it was expanding beyond. We still got it even before that. But just to go back to the beginning for a second, what do you think that battle where you said, you know, you had a vision and that everyone called you crazy, what do you think you saw that maybe others didn't see that allowed you to jump into this?
Oh, okay. What did I see? Look, I'll tell you something. You know, there's the Emunah part that I knew that my concept was good, that was really underpinning it. I'll also share the following. I also really wanted to be my own person. I don't get all the history, but I definitely always wanted to run my own business. I wanted to be my own ish, my own gavra, so to speak. So in combination with all that, one, I felt the community needed it. I felt the community was ready for it. And my own need to like be on my own. Like I'd been reporting to bosses and boards and other for a long time. I really just wanted to kind of run my own business and be my own person. So it was a good confluence of factors. I did not want to go looking for another job in the fundraising world. Basically, I didn't want to go work for an American Friends of an Israeli organization. Remember, I'm coming from Yeshiva University. Like, I just didn't. I didn't want to go down. Like, I'm playing for the Yankees, so to speak. I didn't want to go back to like a minor league team. And so it was almost like I had to do something. It's almost the way I look at it now is like Hashem, like I had to build something on my own, and I wasn't going to do something that was going to be like tiny. I had to do something that it was involved in the community, use some of my connections over the years. Just to me, like it just seemed, I would say natural. I had to make it work almost. Like I don't. It's hard to really explain now that I think about it. But like it was almost like combination of Hashem pushing me so towards something and me pushing me to something, and it just kind of it's interesting. It's now 13, 14 years ago. So it's hard to really capture it. But I was a man on a mission. Like I was so driven. Nothing nothing anyone would have said would have by the way, my in-laws thought I was crazy. My siblings thought I lost it. I don't think, honestly, I don't really think anyone believed in me until like issue 1 or 2, like at all. Like I'm being serious. Like even my wife even questioned me. There was no one who was like in Camp Jewish Link until we got through like issue 1 or 2. So.
Got it. Yeah, but it's funny because maybe you should have. It's good. You should have asked maybe some of the kids who have more of a naive world, more of an innocent worldview. Like I know for myself, before the link, we were subscribers to 2 generalized Jewish papers, and it's not such a nice joke, but we used to call it the NJJN. We used to call it the non-Jewish Jewish news. So. Like...
Yeah. Oh, by the way, you're 100% right. And that's exactly right. In many ways, I really felt. But you should know those papers, NJJN. They do an okay job. They're actually considered relatively strong relative to what's the secular Jewish press is out there in the country, but they're just not laser focused on us, and that's on the observant Shomer Shabbos community. And we have our own needs, we have our own issues, we have our own wants. I hate to say we're living in a different world, man. So when I say it to some of my conservative Reform rabbi friends, people in the community, like I just say, guys, I love you. You're Jews, but your communities. They're not eating kosher. You're not raising your kids. You're not sending to camps. Your kids are melting away. To general America. That's not who we are. That's not where our community is. So.
No, absolutely, and the papers. I think the difference in the papers, certainly reflect that. Did you have influences in terms of how to do the paper, or was it more like generalized knowledge from what you had learned in your life and what you had read, or you had like specific either people that you spoke to about starting it, meaning from the technical side, right? Like how do you do a paper?
Good question. So the truth is, the answer is I had a bunch of influences on that side. I don't get into all the stuff. There's a lot of minutia, but definitely the guys who started the Queens Jewish Link helped me get the practical side, or at least they introduced me to the people who helped me get the practical mechanics. Again, I'm also telling you that I was a big reader. I still am a big reader. I read like, this is true. I read Mishpacha Ami, 5-Town Jewish Times, 5-Town Jewish Home, Flatbush Jewish Journal, Hamodia, Muncie Community Connection, Muncie View, Lakewood Shopper. This is my regular Friday night Shabbos reading. I actually wake up early or let's stay very late Friday night. I really try to read everything. Like I'm a reader, and I wanted to put together a paper that I wanted to read. I mean, I basically said, like, I want a paper that I, as big reader, would want to read. And I had a vision for a paper. My vision was a mix. A vision is a cholent. A paper is a mix. Okay, it's a mix of Torah content, news content, opinion pieces, recipes. Again, I don't cook. I'm not a chef, but I know food is important. It took me a long time. You're gonna laugh, to finally get a decent dating columnist. Okay, or just saying, like, it was.
By the way, just sorry, that Dr. Khani is, I think, me and my wife's favorite part of the paper.
So the point is, I wish to do the Khani, she only publishes twice a month, so I needed to find someone for the other 2 weeks. So we have Dr. Panita Flug. But my point is, like, it pained me physically to publish a paper without a good column on relationships. Okay, meaning, because like that, I know that's an important part of of a strong community paper, like, because people love that stuff, and I love that stuff. Everyone loves that stuff. Most people say, oh, they like the questions better than the answers. Fine, that's but that's okay. I had a vision for what I liked, what I wanted to read, or what I wanted my readers to read, and I really believe the paper is a reflection of that. Am I happy about every piece that's in the paper? Not always. For example, we have a cartoon. We have a bunch of strips of the paper. There's just say we have like I love that stuff. I was a big cartoon guy, so I like that stuff. And so in many ways, the Jewish Link is a reflection of what I like, and over the course of the last decade or so, I've also allowed my editors to influence me a little bit as well, to pitch me like, hey, Moshe, you want to do this? But at its core, the paper, the Jewish Link is a paper that Moshe Kinderlehrer wants to read and wants to put out.
Gotcha. No, that makes sense. And it's cool to kind of hear how it came together. Was it, again, this is also kind of a technical question, but interested in this as well. How logistically complicated was it to set this up, right? I mean, I don't know what you had going into this, but you're not the New York Times, so printing, distribution, like, was this, how impossible, if, I'm assuming it was difficult. How was that process?
Well, it's like any business. There was definitely a lot of steps, a lot of work went into it. I probably worked on it hard for, like, I would say 4 to 6 months before we got started. You probably don't remember this, Barak, but I did not start as a weekly. I started as a bi-weekly.
I actually do remember this. No, I do. I actually remember that.
So I want you, being a bi-weekly is very different than being a weekly. Meaning a bi-weekly means I get a week off. So I will say the following. I worked really hard at the beginning. I will tell you that I did almost everything at the beginning. Not distribution. I couldn't. I mean, I did some delivery. We can talk about that. But I was the editor. I was the ad sales guy. I was the production manager. I literally did everything for the first 2-3 issues. I almost died doing it, because to put together the paper was basically like 2 all-nighters to do. And I just said physically, I almost, like, I couldn't do it. I hired an editor. Today we have a full-time staff of over 10. And in many ways, I kind of look at it like at the beginning, I thought I was doing like 3 or 4 different jobs, literally. And over time, I've gotten to the point now today where I really feel like I'm now doing, only 1.5 jobs. That's kind of where I'm at. My title is publisher today, which sounds glorious, but it really means head of sales in a certain sense. I'll tell you something. I wish that I had the ability. I try to write once a month in the paper. Some publishers, feel they have to put their imprint on it every week. I understand why a publisher would want to do that. But I just, writing. I love writing, but it takes a lot out of me. Like, I have to have a lot of time, focus for it. So, but I really try hard to write once a month. Look, I'll tell you something. I'm not the, in terms of skill sets and things like that, I learned a lot. I always had a feel for publishing, again, from my editor-in-chief days. Like, I worked in, let's say Adobe InDesign. Like, I had a familiarity for what's needed, and what I had to do. And I was taught a couple things. Like, it was definitely like a learning curve. I'll just share with you this much. Distribution, for example. One of the things that got me started, and I'm apologizing to you in Elizabeth, at least where you grew up, is that we did not do. We do home delivery in Bergen, North Jersey, in Bergen and Passaic. Meaning I do free home delivery, so which people think I'm crazy for, but I really felt it was important because in the 5 towns, by the way, none of the 5 towns papers do home delivery. By the way, in Lakewood, the papers do home delivery. In the 5 towns, basically, if you go to any supermarket in the 5 towns, there are massive piles, like 1,000 papers in front of the supermarkets there, and there's a culture there of going to Gourmet Glatt or Seasons or Bingo and picking up the paper at the supermarket. I really felt like I can't do that here. Oh my God! Like, number one, the supermarkets don't have this, but they're not going to allow me to put thousands of papers. I needed to. I couldn't just dump the what's it called? I can't dump the papers on the stores. So I had to figure a way to get to people's homes. And that's been our trademark, actually, since we started, is that my advertisers know that I'm delivering. We publish over 20,000 papers a week. We do free home delivery to over 10,000 addresses every Erev Shabbos, and it's very, very expensive. It started off as at 30 cents a copy. Now we're up to 75 cents a copy. What I'm telling you of those, so what I'm telling you is, if let's say I do home delivery for almost 10,000, I spend just on delivering to people's houses almost about over $7,500 a week, just on home delivery. Okay, my home distribution costs are relative to but I felt it was worth it. Meaning, I felt like it made sense. It made sense, and by the way, it still makes sense to me. Even though, by the way, many people feel like I should get rid of it. I should charge for home delivery. All possible. Maybe I will do that one day. But we're 13 years going strong. It's still working. We're still profitable, and that continues. So the answer is it's there. Everything you have to kind of like distribution. You have to look at one. Printing, another. We have to find a printing press. And I, you kind of like, again, remember, I was an ish amuna, so to speak. Like nothing was going to stop me.
Right.
I was going to make this. I was going to make this happen. I had to make it happen. So, I was going to print that first edition. I'll just tell you a funny story. Our first edition almost didn't get printed. We worked on it all night. And the reason what took me so long is I had no sense of what goes where in a newspaper. Like, where did the Divrei Torah go? Do they go on the back? Do they go on the front? Do they, as much as I was telling you I had a vision for a newspaper that I wanted to read, I didn't know the structure of the paper. Do I put news in front? Do I put what's the structure of a paper? So, make a long story short, it took me all night to figure it out. And I call my printer at 8 a.m. saying, "Oh, okay, I finished the paper's done." I said, "Well, you missed your printing slot by 8 hours." I said, "What do you mean?" I almost had a heart attack on the slot. It's the Thursday morning, my first printing edition, and I did not have a printer. By the way, I went my hairs went white on the spot, but thank God I found a printer in 2 hours, and we came out with our first edition Thursday, March 8, 2013. But and there are many, many stories like that of crazy stuff. Like if I didn't publish my first edition, I would have been finished. Even today, if let's say there's an issue, a blizzard, snowstorm, can't deliver it, it would be a big problem. But thank God I have those 13 years of weekly, bi-weekly printing that I would survive. And it wouldn't be great, but I would, it wouldn't be the end of the world. But it would definitely not work in the what's it called. If you're interested in one more story, like my first ever Sukkot edition. Okay, remember Sukkot comes right after Yom Kippur, so I'm sitting there at Ne'ilah, and I can't stand for Ne'ilah. I have my toes bothering me, so I go to my Jewish doctor right after. I'm really in bad shape. He says, "Mazel tov, Moshe, you have gout. I'm diagnosing you with gout." I said, "Okay, great," and he gives me a medicine called colchicine, and he says, "Take this every hour on the hour until you either start vomiting or you start the diarrhea or the pain goes away." So I took it every hour on the hour for 24 hours, and the pain didn't go away. So basically, I went back to the emergency room. I got it done, but it's my first ever Chag Sukkot edition, and I'm not feeling good. I'm just not feeling good. So, and I have to finish within the next day or so. The Sukkot issue, but I'm not feeling good. So my wife says you should call the doctor. The doctor basically says I'm in Israel, so I spoke to the service, and they went over my medical history. And then I told her that I took 24 doses of this medicine in a 24-hour period. So the doctor basically panics. Says, "Moshe, you took that much medicine. You're saying you poisoned yourself and you might die." So I'm like, I had such faith in my doctor. Said, "There's no way that my doctor would kill me." I mean, and also I don't feel good, but I don't feel like I'm dying. I haven't died before. I haven't died. I don't think I'm dying. So again, I had this faith that there's no way my doctor could have killed me. And my family there, I'm sitting at my dining room table, and I'm like, we have to get the sukkah issue. And again, it's all me, it's basically. And then my wife, they stage an intervention. They try to get me away from my laptop, and I say this story because I just want you to see how crazy you have to be. And they put me on the phone with poison control, and they put it on the phone so the whole family can hear. and the poison control says, if you ingested the amount of this medicine that you took, your organs will begin to shut down in the next 24 to 48 hours. And I said to myself, that is great news, because it'll give me time. And I want you to know that I was dead serious when I said it. My family thought I completely lost it. Thankfully, I'm a big guy. And they said, Moshe, because you're a little bigger than average, you're broader or whatever, maybe you'll live to another day. So I told my family, look, guys, the sukkahs issue is more important than my health. Okay, at this point, there's no way my doctor's going to intentionally kill me. He just couldn't believe it that he was going to kill me. I don't feel like I'm dying. I'm going to go straight to the emergency room once we finish the paper. That's exactly what happened. I went to the emergency room right after we finished the paper. Obviously, I lived, but I say that story because it's just that's how meshugana you have to be to start a paper, and also to come out with my first ever sukkahs edition. So,
wow.
I wrote that story up, and I send it to people if they ever want to be a publisher. I say, just this is how crazy you have to be. So that's if you're on that level, are you able? Do I allow you to start?
Unreal. So it's funny, actually, I don't think I knew until you mentioned it now that there's home delivery anywhere. I just thought it was kind of, the same. It's pretty amazing. So after, what was the immediate, definitely the next big thing I want to talk about is the growth. But what was the immediate feedback?
The immediate feedback was really solid. It's just people like, wow, Moshe, this is like, why, where have you been all our lives? Like, and basically you should know, when I told them, I said, guys, there is a community called the Five Towns. Many of you have heard of it. They have papers that actually cover the Orthodox community. And I showed them things like, and by the way, you should know, in many ways, it's interesting. Like people, you asked the question, I didn't give you the full historical answer, but the Jewish press, most of, Barak, you're young, but I'm in my 50s, but I grew up reading the Jewish press. My parents grew up reading the Jewish press. The Jewish press was the national Orthodox paper. And what happened over the last 30, 40 years is, because we don't have Nevuah today, we don't have prophecy today, is the Jewish press has been eclipsed a little bit. Meaning there were first of all some of the Haredi publications. Hamodia started. Mishpacha came from Israel. And now there's Ami. So in a sense, they began to be a little bit eclipsed. Also, but a little more of the move to the right in the whole Orthodox world. They began to be eclipsed on a national scale. And then what started about 20 years ago was you had local publications, like hyperlocals. You had publications like the Five Towns. You had the Five Towns papers. You had publications like in the Flatbush Jewish Journal. You began to have these local publications. Kind of like people began to read. By the way, you should know that there was a thing in the business world, in the media world, there was a time when hyperlocal was very popular. I would say the 90s to 2000s, like people wanted hyperlocal news. Hyperlocal was like the key buzzword, and it was true. Meaning people wanted to read about their what's going on around them, their taxes, their politics, and things like that. So what happened is I look at the Jewish link as we look at like the Jewish press as like the Zeta, the Saba, so to speak, of papers. And in many ways, we are all kind of like grandchildren in many ways. But I'm the Jewish link. My paper is in a sense like kind of we're similar to, let's say, the Five Towns papers, meaning there was a feeling like, hey, every region, every strong local community. By Lakewood today has 5 papers. Okay, just to give you an example. And I think and it's like a new publication starting every week or every few weeks. Not all of them succeed. But there's definitely a trend, a movement towards people want to again hyperlocal publication. So I was part of that trend, and I felt like I was kind of like I was doing something that also fed my belief. Like I knew this was working in other communities. I just had to make it a reality here. In North Jersey, in Jersey. So that's and really, thank God, Hashem allowed me to do it. Look, I'm going to tell you something. It's a tremendous amount of work. It still is. it was definitely harder at the beginning. But it's certain aspects have gotten a lot easier now. Certain things are even harder. So as your kids grow up, the challenges change. So it's the same thing with the business. The challenges, on a sense, get easier, but they also get harder. Meaning the actual physical work may get to be a little less, but the actual decision process is much more challenging. Do you invest, like, do I risk losing $250,000, $500,000? Like, these are decisions, like, I'll just say, as a business person, my first publication in Muncie was what we called a Muncie.com. I lost like $40,000-$50,000 on it. Like, if that had happened to me, like a few years ago earlier, I would have been crushed. I would not have been able to survive losing that kind of money. I'd be finished. I'd be over as a business person. And it's actually crazy because, losing that money and being able to survive was such a powerful lesson to me. I'm able to kind of, but I still wanted to do a Muncie paper, but being able to lose that kind of money and still kind of like come out of it whole was a lot of learning, a lot of learning experiences, and the learning continues. It doesn't really stop.
For sure. And this is actually just an interesting aside, and I don't know if it's like obviously like a company secret, but just because you mentioned it, I thought I may as well ask because it seems interesting. But is it supported by ad sales? Somewhat, mostly, entirely?
We are 100% ad, meaning because we don't charge for subscriptions, which is how most publications pay the printer bill, distribution bill today is through subscriptions. We are completely advertiser. It's our main source of revenue by 95%. And actually, that's the truth is, that's a challenge to a business, which is, how do you diversify your revenue stream? How do you grow? You don't want to be making money in other ways. And I've tried things like events and other publications, and they're different. I don't want to necessarily talk about it. Is this a business show? I don't know.
No, just again, I feel like that might be interesting. People might. For me, that's just interesting. Not from like not the minutia of all the details, but just broadly, like, how does this keep running? Like, very, very broad.
Let's say, what was the question? The question was what that is.
It's just mostly from ad sales.
Yeah. So yeah, we're. I mean, you are. I like to joke, by the way, we're actually a real estate business. That meaning, if you really think about ad sales, is real estate. It's just quick real estate. Meaning, right. It's cover boxes on the front page, back cover, inside cover. So we're on a weekly basis. We're doing. It's a real estate sales game. We're fully digital. Every article is shareable. I'm very proud of it. We get 250,000 views a month on our website. Articles get shared, they get read, they get distributed widely. But I don't really make that much money from our traffic. I mean, maybe I make enough for a few car payments, but it's really a print advertising led dominated business. And honestly, it's my challenge as a business owner to try to change that. I'll be honest, that's something I haven't really succeeded at. I mean, it's something that keeps me up. But what keeps me up at night is, how can we be more than a good Shabbos community weekly? That's what keeps me up. Like, that's like my driving fear. How can we be more? And honestly, sometimes I worry that I haven't answered that question, or haven't yet answered that question. So.
Right, for sure. And I guess that's, again, also quickly, that's an important piece, right? That it's not a subscription-based model, because your goal is to, you want this to be a thing that everybody is able to look at and read. Yeah, right. Which I think is really, really, really noble. I want to talk about the growth a little bit, and we can talk this again also broadly, but just to kind of, even if you want to use like, very concrete, or discrete points in time. Kind of the growth and the success, even for me, right? I can think of kind of a few key highlights that I've seen that I love. Is like, I do remember when it went from bi-weekly to weekly. That I remember. I don't remember if it was monthly in the beginning. That one I don't remember, but I do remember it became more frequent. I remember when the coverage began to expand, very heavily beyond just the North Jersey area, right? I joke, like, the first time I saw a sports star of the week was a kid from a school that wasn't one of the Teaneck schools. I'm like, oh, okay, we've made it. And thirdly, what I love seeing now, and this is, I think, more recent, is during vacation seasons, and it's like the Jewish Link will be available in the following locations in Florida. And like, to me, that means you made it. So can you talk, again, broad strokes, but about the growth that you've seen over the last 13 years?
100%. So if you're just talking about growth, so I was very narrowly focused at the beginning, just Bergen County, North Jersey. Very quickly, I realized, hey, Passaic County is not far. Even though we're not always a perfect fit, because it communities maybe a little bit of a different flavor, different blend. I still felt it was important. It was basically like a sister county. If you look at the map, Passaic and Bergen are next to each other. And then, as the paper grew, Barak, I just began to feel that, I think I'm actually going to laugh. It actually started with Berea, maybe. Berea and JEC they basically, Berea basically came to me and said, we have all these Bergen County kids in our school. This is before NALA. And, we want to be in your paper. And then I began to realize, we're really all connected. And then I would get these calls from Highland Park and Edison and saying, we send our kids to, these RPRY graduates are going to Frisch, and they're going to TABC, and they're going to My Note. The basic message I got was, we're really all connected. We're just, so I hired an editor for Essex County, which is like West Orange, Livingston. And we just began to kind of move south. We expanded our print run. We expanded our distribution. I wasn't ready, and I'm apologizing to you as a Hillside guy. I wasn't ready to do home delivery in your areas, but I knew that I needed to be down there. I just knew that we needed to cover. So I kind of I did it in stages. Then the next big transition happened was Bronx West. So basically, for the last 7-8 years, we've been really down. Almost, my joke is, when I tell advertisers, we basically we're responsible for the frum community north of Lakewood. Lakewood doesn't need us, okay? They don't need the Jewish thing of Lakewood. But once you go a little bit north of Lakewood and you hit East Brunswick or Manalapan or whatever, that's when that becomes my territory. So then what the truth is, what happened, that's New Jersey. I actually started another paper. Barak, I don't know if you know this. I started a biweekly Jewish Link of Bronx, Westchester, Connecticut. Okay. I started in, let's say, 2017, 2016. And it ran as a biweekly, and it covered, I did home delivery to every from Shomer Shabbos Home in Riverdale, Scarsdale, New Rochelle, White Plains. I also did in Stanford as well. And that paper was okay. It was small. It was a tiny paper, but I wasn't losing money on it. Comes along COVID, and the world is, March 2020. You remember what it was like, and I decided, you know what, I can't run this. I couldn't. The Bronx Westchester paper, it was going to be a loss. I said, you know what? Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to double down. I basically made a bet that people in Stanford are okay reading the same paper that people in Hillside and Highland Park Edison. And the way I looked at it is like, there are unifying factors in the community. And some of the unifying factors are schools like SAR and Frisch, which people from Stanford and people from your area, they MTA also, people are sending from a very far swath. And I basically said I know it's COVID, but I'm actually going to merge the paper, and I'm going to start distributing and printing in Bronx, Westchester, Connecticut, weekly. And thank God that's been a good decision. I also, by the way, we moved also to, when the Jewish Week closed about 5 years ago, I made a decision to also focus on, I hired a Manhattan community editor, and we now focus on Upper West Side, Upper East Side as well. So, and I even do Staten Island as well, what's left of the modern Orthodox community, which is not much. So, because Staten Island is basically going to be Hasidish in the next 20 years. But we definitely focus on a little bit on that community too. So the point is that kind of really, I'd say so COVID was kind of a push to merge the paper in terms of growth. By the way, thank God, we're one of the largest weekly from Orthodox Shomer Shabbos papers in the community, and I also, I'm very proud to say that we are. I guess we're the most Zioni, we're the most religious Zionist. There's a lot of things in my paper. We also one of the few publications left in the Orthodox world that actually publish pictures of women. I think it's basically me, the Five-Town Jewish Times, and the Jewish Press. Literally, almost no other Orthodox papers publish pictures of women at all today. So I'm just saying, like, that's like, if I obviously I have to be careful. I'm in terms of what I publish. Nothing, but certainly women are a big part of our community. Last time I checked, so I'm very proud of that. And I've also had a good sell to advertisers. I tell my advertisers, great, you should be in the Haredi papers, but you know what? You're missing about 10-15% of Klal Yisrael that is highly educated, has money, travels, goes out to eat kosher, and they're not reading Mishpach Ami to the same extent that Lakewood, Flatbush, Monsey, and even the five towns are. But you know what? They're actually reading my paper, and that sell, in a nutshell, has kind of kept me strong. That meaning once I get an advertiser to realize, like, hey, he has a point. There is a relatively small portion of the frum world that necessarily isn't necessarily reading Ami Mishpacha or the Haredi papers, weekly, but they are looking at my paper, and I do get them in. So then in many ways that's the Jewish Link story,
Right.
or sell in a nutshell. So sorry to be so business oriented. There's a lot. I could talk more about the community also. I love our community. Meaning I benefit also between you and me. I benefit because our community is strong. I'm telling you, I really. Hillside, I look at Hillside as kind of a stable community. Elizabeth is a stable. You're not having exponential growth, but you're stable. But communities like North Jersey are places like Teaneck and Englewood. They're Fairlawn. They're growing. Meaning we are a strong community. Meaning we're not necessarily growing exponential growth like Lakewood. But Greater Teaneck is strong. Passaic is strong. These are strong communities. And by the way, I benefit as a publisher. By the way, who wants to be a publisher of a community that's dying?
Right.
No one. So I benefit because our communities are strong. So.
For sure. And don't worry, my last couple of questions are going to be more, I think, community focused. But it's really interesting to get the inside scoop on this kind of thing, because also, like, to me, I vaguely remember some of these changes, and when you're reading it week to week, you don't necessarily notice it. But I feel like I remember seeing more about Connecticut and kind of the Bronx area that, like, I didn't think about all the background to it, but I do remember, I joke, like, discovering schools that I never knew existed in the back of the school section, and now to hear, well, because there was this very actually intentional merger, which is just interesting to hear. But yeah, a little bit on the kind of to finish off, a couple questions on the content itself. So one is, look, you have a wide range, right? Even though you talk about, my focus is sort of the modern Orthodox communities, but that's still a pretty wide range.
No, yeah, but actually, I'm sorry, I should have said that. My core is the modern. I mean, that's where I thrive in. Right. But at the end of the day, that the word modern, I hate the word modern Orthodox.
For sure.
And I'm saying, like, many people who are in the modern Orthodox who don't even identify with that term. So I'm in that camp also. Whatever you want to call it. I happen to like the word centrist Orthodox, but no one has any idea what the word.
By the way, that happens to be my preference also, but I agree with you. I think it's even more nuanced and less, So
whatever. Maybe I would say the frum, but maybe not yeshivish. But again, even in our community, we have very, the yeshivish community is making inroads. So the answer is yeah. So we definitely, I like to serve that community. I would say a little bit more open to the outside world, a little bit more open to the secular world. Really like. Where it's a community that's engaged with the world, not really, not, I would say not insular, meaning we just kind of recognize the outside world for its flaws, but also for the positives as well. So that in a sense, it's funny. I actually was on a podcast recently, which hasn't been released yet, about me defending the values of modern Orthodoxy, Torah Mada, which from a Chabad podcast, that's, I've been thinking about a lot of these issues. But at the end of the day, I try very hard, but I don't succeed. I'm telling you, like, there are certain communities I'm never going to get. I have friends of mine who call me from Passaic, say, Moshe, we like you, we like your paper, but when you put a picture of the Frisch volleyball girls team in sweatpants, like, I can't let my kids read it. I'm like, I said, guys, I'm not putting anything prurient in the paper, But I understand it, what am I, and they'll say, oh, and we're not against the fact that you publish pictures of women, but sometimes you show too much skin on something. And the truth is, you shouldn't. You're gonna laugh. I actually have editors whose job it is to make sure that we're watching elbows, knees, skirts, all that stuff. And we sometimes succeed, don't succeed. I'll never forget this. We got an ad from Governor Murphy with his wife, like a holiday ad, and his wife was like wearing like just something some completely inappropriate non-sneas, and I'm like, oh, what do I do with this? With this image, and it's the governor. So in the end, I printed it, but I saw other publications that told me that they didn't print it, they rejected it, or they covered her up. So which by the way, I'm not above saying we do it all the time. We definitely have filled in knees, ankles, and it's just what it's how you function today in the FRUB world. So.
For sure, that was my wife's job when she was in high school and was working on the high school yearbook. That was one of their jobs. But with that broad range, how do you, obviously there's still boundaries, right? Obviously, so how do you decide what is and is not fit to print?
Ooh, good question. Okay, so let's talk on the political side. So. There's an organization out there called Smol Emuni. So Smol Emuni is basically an organization of mostly Orthodox observant Jews, for example, that basically they're advocating that Israel is committing a genocide and they want the Gaza war to end. And I made a decision recently. I published a few things from them at the beginning, and then I made a decision. I really felt that they kind of were a little bit beyond where our community consensus was. So the answer is you're going to get it. Really comes down to Moshe Kinderlehrer. I do have I think I have big shoulders. My editors certainly have input. I believe that the Orthodox observant from community leans more right. But I also do like the fact I really want there to be diversity. You'll laugh. One of the things I actually really wanted in my paper, but I never succeeded, is I really wanted to have L'Shem Shemayim debates of left wing versus right wing. To have, let's say, Rabbi Avi Weiss debating women rabbis with someone on the right wing, and I never really achieved that. In the old days in Europe, the Yiddish papers, they would have like the Agudists would be fighting on the pages of a paper, a war of ideas almost, with the Mizrahi and the Bundists and all these, and the revisionists and all these, and you would have these debates play out on the pages of a paper. I have not. I feel badly, but I have not achieved that. And part of the problem is that people are a little bit unsophisticated. They assume that anything that's written in the paper, even if it's a little more left or more right, like they assume that I must agree with it. And that's a problem. I'll be honest. It's a challenge as a publisher. We try to hew a little bit to this. I try to be again in the center, but the center from the perspective most of the secular world is more right wing. But again, if you're looking at it from a yeshivish Hasidish lens, I'm more on the left wing. At the end of the day, by the way, it's interesting you say that. I actually feel that I'm in a unique position. I am a Yeshiva University graduate, but you don't know this about me, Barak, but actually my best Torah years were spent learning in a very right-wing yeshiva. I learned for 2 years base medrash in a branch of the Yeshiva of Philadelphia in South Bend. So I actually believe it has something to do with me starting the paper.
Sorry, South Bend, Indiana, or is there another South Bend?
South Bend, Indiana, South Bend. Meaning I learned in South Bend, and I want you to know my best Torah years. My learning that 2 years, there was no distractions, there was no smartphones, there was no worries about dating, no worries about parnasa. It kills me. I still remember shiurim that I heard at 19. There's a concept in Gemara called Girsa Dianka. So you're learning from your youth stays with you. My best Torah experiences, my most positive Torah experiences, were actually in the yeshivish world, and I got very, very. I actually got very, very influenced then, and I actually believe that. If you think about Barak, for example, you grew up in a Torah Model YU world. At least your education, is I actually think that that's what caused me to start the paper. Meaning, meaning the yeshivish attitude is like, oh, if there's a problem, you got to solve, you got to figure out a solution. I kind of like, I basically came to the community TNEC and I'm like, what's going on? How come we don't have our own front paper? How come we don't have our own, I mean, like, it was, how come we don't have our own front, it bothered me to my core that we didn't have our own publication, and kind of a little bit that yeshivish askanas like background said, hey, I gotta, if no one else is going to do it, someone's got to do it. I got to do it, and that's that's kind of, in many ways, I kind of, if I'd stayed in the YU world only, I don't know if I would have had that. So the point is that I actually believe that I'm, I have a lot of friends in the Lakewood Yeshivish world, and I actually feel like I'm kind of like, I see the world a lot different than my editors do. I see the world, I relate to the world, the Torah world, a little bit differently. So the answer is I'm kind of like, I'm navigating a little bit. Sometimes do I publish something that's a little bit too left wing? Yes, I get that heat from my right wingers. My left wingers feel every time we used to publish Larry Przansky, like the left wingers would go crazy. And they're different. And you know what? That's actually, again, that's not a bad thing. Sometimes it's good to be a little bit controversial, sometimes. Yeah, you have to be able to navigate it. And by the way, you have to navigate it sensitively. But I've definitely made mistakes over the years. And the goal is to try to keep those kind of mistakes to a minimum. You want to, I'll still make them, but if I do make them, I'll just share with you this. Just this week, we rejected a piece. One of the candidates running for Congress on the Upper West Side of Manhattan submitted a piece to us, which basically she accused Israel of committing a genocide. So we called up her chief of staff, and I said, look, if you, I'm just telling you, I said, I don't agree with this piece. You're using language that I think will not help you with our community. I'm rejecting it. Okay. But the truth is, part of me actually wanted to publish it because I knew that it would generate nice controversy, and it would be great. People would be criticizing her for saying that, but they would also be criticizing the Jewish Link for saying it. But I kind of also wanted to educate her a little bit, saying that, this is not where our community is. We may not love this war. We feel horrified at the deaths, but Israel is not a genocidal nation. That's that kind of lashon, that kind of language is really not well received. And look, we had a very nice conversation with her chief of staff. Is it going to change her mind? No, but will she think twice now about? And when I tell her that, and she tells me like, oh, she hangs out with, let's say, all these secular Jews who believe that Israel's hanging. I stressed to her. I said the majority of the Jews are. You're speaking to a minority. I'm not going to say fringe minority, but it's really the majority of Jewish people don't believe what you're hearing from from what's it called, from Jeremy Ben-Ami, who was, or from these like anti-Zionist Jews. The majority of Jewish people are not with them. So you have to understand that. So that's
for sure.
But that's actually one of my roles that I like, is that I, as a publisher, I actually get to, I feel blessed and privileged to have these kinds of conversations. They don't always go well. Then it's not always positive, but sometimes even if it doesn't go well, you hope that you achieve something. So
no, for sure. It's definitely it's a unique spot, certainly. And then in terms of, right, so we've talked about the growth, right? How do you decide what to print? How you got there? What has been the impact that you've seen on the community? Impact, feedback, however you want to take it, from the 13 years of the Jewish Link.
So you're gonna laugh. I actually never loved the name, the Jewish Link. Okay, to me, when I first heard the word Jewish Link, I thought it was a Kiruv organization. Okay, but I learned something, and I've actually kind of backed into. I've changed my mind over the years over the name. First, number one, it's not the name. It's not really. I'll get to your point about the community in a second. It's not really about the name. It's really about the product you put out. I could have called myself the Jewish anything, okay, and it would have, and if, as long as the product I was putting out was good, the name would have worked. But I actually believe that one of the impacts of the Jewish Link is I have linked, so to speak. I have married together, or knitted together, a community that maybe kind of knew that they were connected to, that people know about yeshiva leagues and things like that. But I really believe the Jewish Link has helped. Bring the, I use words like integrate, bring the community closer together. I'll hopefully even use terms like, I'll say to you, I hope maybe it's even fostered its growth, enhanced its growth. People joke with me. It's very nice, Moshe, about enhancing the growth, but like your biggest advertisers are Israeli realtors. So you realize you're like undermining your own growth. If everyone's going to move to Israel, where's the? And by the way, actually, that's a legitimate concern. It really is. Like if there is no future here, or there's limited future here for us, then I need to be worried. But I'm not worried.
The Jewish link of, what do you mean? The Jewish link of Ramat Beit Shemesh. I feel like that's perfect.
I've thought about it. By the way, I'm working on something. It's starting by Israel. It's a whole different. I've actually looked into starting a paper in Israel. It's definitely on the agenda, but it would be it would have to be different. It'd have to have a different flavor. By the way, I spoke to my friends in Israel. I said, here's my question for you. Do any of your kids, guys, I'm saying I'm in my 50s, do any of your kids who are in their teens or 20s, do any of them read anything in English at all? And the universal answer is no, nothing. So my point is that if I would start a paper and the next generation isn't even going to be reading it or looking at it, then that's a problem long term.
Right.
Just to publish a paper for Anglo Olim, to me, isn't as exciting or sexy if I know that the next generation's not really interested in it. So that's a challenge for me. Actually, I haven't figured that one out. So that's whatever. But yeah, Israel's definitely it's a long-term concern.
Sure.
Hopefully, maybe it'll be my kids' challenge, my next generation's challenge.
Yeah, very good. Okay, so I want to wrap up now with a couple of maybe quicker questions. So one is, it's a little game that, if you don't mind me playing.
Yep.
And it's going to be called, I've seen this done on many social media, so I thought I'd try it, and we'll see how it goes. It's called Blindly Rank, where basically I'm going to give you 5 different sections in the Jewish link, and then it's very parv, and then you have to basically put it in your favorite, kind of what order, 1 to 5, but you don't know what's coming next, so you have to be very, very strategic about how you place it.
Got it.
Okay, so 1 to 5, so I'm going to also mark it here. We can maybe talk about the perfect ones after, but the first section I'm going to give you is all the advice columns.
3.
All right, perfect. Okay, the memes.
4.
Okay, letters to the editor.
1.
And then I got the ads.
2.
Okay, so that leaves number 5. The only place you have left is going to be the news, like the broader news that you publish.
Number 5.
How do you feel about this list? Letters to the editor, ads, advice, memes, news.
Well, again, but remember, my list is, you're talking to the publisher, so my list is going to be different than anyone else's. So the letters to the editor are really the only place that I'm allowed to be controversial. I know that people love looking at the letters to the editor. They're also, by the way, in the front of the paper, meaning like letters to the editor are in the front. So I put them there for a reason. So that's 1. 2, ads is because that's how I serve. That's the part that's really the income. That's the support. 3, what was 3 again? 3.
Advice, the advice columns.
So that's just it's a good thing to read. People read that stuff. 4, what was 4?
The memes, the memes of the week.
It's great. People love them, but it's like people aren't turning necessarily. You know what? I shouldn't say that. My younger demographic tells me that's what they like to look for first. But by the way, actually, I don't put the memes up front because I want people to read the rest of my paper. So memes are important, but they're not top 1, 2, or 3. 4 is
gotcha. And the last was just the news.
And actually, I'll tell you something. The news, I'll share with you something. News is a big part of it, but at the end of the day, we're a weekly, we're a Shabbos paper, meaning I'm not breaking news. The Shabbos, all the stuff in the paper and the week, nothing there is more current than Wednesday morning, than the prior Wednesday morning. Meaning that the news, it's important, but it's actually not. It's not super critical. Meaning it's people want to know what's going on. But it's kind of like, a lot of the stuff people may be aware of. Oh, they may be aware that there was a dinner or there was something happened. The governor signed something or this or that. But it's not what people, what gets people excited about the Jewish link. They like reading the news. It's important, but it's not really the main draw. And by the way, I have discussions with other papers, like, how they do it, what they believe in the mix is, just say everyone had, like, if you heard of a paper Hamodia, the first 40 pages of Hamodia is business news, secular. I'm like, guys, or Divrei Torah, Flatbush Jewish Journal, Monsey Mavasser. It's 30 pages of Divrei Torah. Now think about it, Barak. If I would start the Jewish link with 30 to 40 pages of Divrei Torah, I would be shocked. And by the way, that's not what I think. By the way, I put Torah right after community.
Sure,
news.
yeah.
It's right there. I don't bury it, but I just don't think our community wants to. The first thing is 40 pages of the Torah. Now, the Torah is super important, but you have to know your readership. You have to know your community. You have to kind of know. You have to kind of you have to know what you have to know what you have to again, it's Moshe Kinderlehrer. You have to kind of have a feeling for what you think the community wants and needs. Again, I told you I don't always get it right. It's a formula that's been working more or less, and I'm open to criticism, open to change as well.
For sure. The very last thing that I want to ask you is what's next for you, for the paper?
That's a very good question. I'll just share with you quickly that the truth is I actually feel like the paper is now reaching a state of maturation. Used to always be that every Chag, every Yom Tov edition was bigger than the one before. Let's say we were over 300 pages for Pesach. I'm not seeing that as much now. Meaning the last Chag edition, usually Rosh Hashanah, Pesach are biggest editions. They've kind of been around the same the last year or two. So that's a message to me, which is that I gotta figure out other ways to keep growing. And the answer is you'll probably see, you'll see other things. You'll be seeing different things. I'm working on something Israel related, but not necessarily an Israel focused paper. That's something I'm working on. I'm working on maybe something in Los Angeles. That's what my next phone call. I don't. And also the next lesson is I don't know what I don't know. I just know that I have to be open to different opportunities. Again, I told you how can I be more than a Shabbos weekly? That mantra, that fear, is really what keeps me up. And by the way, I'm hoping that with that combination of fear, with being open to opportunities, that will be that. I can't give you specifics, but that will drive the growth in the years ahead.
For sure. No, yeah, 100%. Okay, Moshe, thank you so much for coming on to speak to me a little bit. Wishing you continued hatzlacha, and I plan on enjoying the link. We're recording this on a Friday, so I plan on enjoying it tonight.
If you made it through the entire episode, thank you. Hopefully that means you enjoyed. If you did, then I'd really appreciate it if you'd leave a like, subscribe, and even share the podcast. Have any comments, feedback, or guest suggestions? I'd love to hear from you. Send all you have to say to frombutrelatable@gmail.com. Again, that's frombutrelatable@gmail.com. Thanks again for listening. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.